I welcome back this week to Food for Thought, Brian McDonogh. How are you doing, Brian?
I'm very well, thank you. And how are you today, Dibs?
I'm fantastic.
Great. I'm so pleased to hear that. It's lovely to hear people being positive about their lives and their health. It's great. Well done.
I absolutely agree, to be honest. And I think I always want to have every single day feeling extraordinarily good and see the best in everything I'm doing. So yes, today is going to be a fantastic day, and I've started it off in the way that I want to.
Well, I think I'll take a leaf out of your book because that's very positive thinking, and I think that's wonderful.
I'll have to share breakfast with you one day, and then I can give you the energy as well.
Don't you find that positive people, it's like a smile, it just radiates and it spreads like anything, quicker than any virus.
Well, it's
Being friendly and smiley.
That's absolutely true. It's really fascinating. When I moved to this part of the country, the south of England, what I found was that people didn't make the eye contact or chat to you in anywhere the same way as they do from the north of England, where you can be stood anywhere and within a matter of minutes, you know the life and history of the person you stood next to, even if you've never met them. And I noticed the same thing in Ireland. Everyone's extraordinarily friendly and will say hello to you and go out their way to say hello to you. But in the south of England, people tend to avoid eye contact far, far more, I've noticed. And it's very hard when you smile at people. They will look away because I think they feel rather threatened by it.
Yeah, they become very suspicious if you're over friendly or kind. Yeah, I understand, because coming from South Africa, where people are really quite happy and smiley, interested and joyful and shake hands, and a really heartfelt how are you, and it's great. But I understand, because when I came to the south of England myself, I found that I had to adapt. I had to respect people's space, which even meant that, don't smile if they're obviously in a bad mood.
The key thing I learned was that in the north, if someone says, "I'll just pop round for a cup of tea," it really does just mean pop round for a cup of tea.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, when I popped round for a cup of tea, when I moved to here, they said, "I'll just come round for a cup of tea," and I turned up, and they said, "You haven't phoned to tell us you were coming."
Got an appointment.
And I really learnt that actually, it's very different. It's fascinating, different cultures, even in different parts of the same country.
Yeah, exactly. But you find each culture's got something to offer. So what I've found in the south of England is they've got a discipline that I really respect, and I felt that was something good. So they're disciplined in a lot of ways. And so each culture, although we may not get on with it or like it, or each culture, no matter where you are in the world, has got something that we can learn from.
Yeah. Well, I must like it, because I've been here quite a number of years now, I have to say.
Right, good.
Now, this week's interview is basically to pick up where we left off on the previous week's one, which is in regards to talking about cholesterol, which you've written a book about, haven't you?
Yeah, I've decided to write a book about cholesterol because I was so sick and tired of all the nonsense that is being spread through newspapers and the media in general, as well as what conventional doctors are telling people. And I just thought, it's time to just speak the facts, whether, the middle road. I don't believe in that one should be overly cautious. But when, what really did it for me was when I read a report that said that of all the patients who had heart attacks in the UK, 70% had normal cholesterol. And yet, if you ask any man in the street, what's the most dangerous thing, for heart attacks, they say, "Oh, cholesterol, that's bad." And the truth is that cholesterol is vitally important. It's not bad at all. And there are so many other risk factors that are more important when it comes to heart attacks than cholesterol. But I hope to talk about some of those today.
Now, cholesterol's been studied since the 1850s, hasn't it? It's got a really long research history behind it. And in effect, there's been Nobel Prizes won for the research into cholesterol. I think it was Brown and Goldstein, wasn't it? I think, I can't remember whether it was in the 1970s or 80s when they actually won that. Originally, it was suggested that effectively the issues were caused by excess cholesterol in the bloodstream, weren't they?
That's correct. Yeah, quite right. The actual molecule was first discovered. It was in 1967 really that people really realized what it was, but it was first discovered in 1815, I think, somewhere around there.
Wow.
But cholesterol is one of it's a rather large molecule of fat. So if you think of the fats that you've heard of, you've probably heard of saturated fatty acids and polyunsaturated fats, like fish oils. Well, cholesterol is much bigger than that. It's like taking a fish oil and adding on a whole lot of chains and circular type structures, which give it a steroid. The steroids have a circular structure, and cholesterol's actually got 4 of those attached to a type of fatty acid chain. So it's a big molecule, and the body has to deal with it in different ways. So if levels go too high, for example, that doesn't matter, because if you are living an active life, you're burning it up, because cholesterol is one of our main fuels to burn energy. So you burn cholesterol so that your body temperature can be normal and so on. So if we're living active lives, there's no problem in our cholesterol levels going up every now and then. But I'm not sure where you actually wanted to start, because there's so much to talk about cholesterol, and personally I think the best place to start is with all the benefits.
Okay.
People don't really realize all the benefits of cholesterol. They just see it as something bad. Well, that is really poor information, and I know even a lot of GPs today have forgotten all the benefits of cholesterol. So I'll quickly run through some of those, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
Cholesterol, you know that your cell membranes are made of 2 layers of fatty acids. Now, if you have 2 layers of anything, think of 2 sheets of metal, for example. The one won't move over the other easily unless you put ball bearings between them. So if you put ball bearings between those sheets of metal, the top layer will easily move over the bottom layer, won't it? Mm-hmm. Now, cholesterol acts as the ball bearings between the 2 layers of fatty acids inside cell membranes. And what that allows is for that cell to actually be more fluid in its movements. If you think, for example, of your white blood cells like neutrophils that need to gobble up germs, these need to move in a particular direction, yet they don't have feet. So the cell membrane has to push out in a particular direction. That's called a pseudopodium. You might remember that from studying amoeba in biology classes. But the cell can't change shape like that unless the membrane layers can move over each other. And cholesterol does that for the cell. Then it insulates us from the cold and from heat. So it allows our cells to adjust to changes in the temperatures. So if you go from a very hot climate to a very cold climate, cholesterol is the thing that's going to help you to adapt. But one of the most important functions of cholesterol is in making hormones. It is the building block for so many important hormones. If you think of your sex hormones, for example, like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and then you may have heard of the adrenal glands. They make stress hormones called cortisol. Some people know it as cortisol. And then one of our most abundant hormones called DHEA, dehydroepiandrosterone. These are our chronic stress hormones. So what do they do for us? They give us strength, energy, drive, and stamina. They're the things that get us out of bed in the morning. So all of these come from cholesterol. And then your listeners will learn today how cholesterol is manufactured in the liver, that 90%, up to 90% of all the cholesterol in your blood did not come from your diet. You did not eat it. Your liver made it. And the liver makes cholesterol mostly in the evenings when we're asleep. And what your liver does to get rid of cholesterol, if it wants to push cholesterol out for excretion, what the liver makes, you may remember, is bile. So cholesterol forms an important component in bile. But in this part of the world, we have become acutely aware, actually, especially lately, of the lack of vitamin D. And you know that vitamin D you make when the sun shines on your skin. Guess what you're making it from? You make vitamin D from cholesterol that is in your skin. And then because cholesterol is a fatty thing, it helps with the absorption of the fat-soluble vitamins. Not only vitamin D itself, but vitamin A, E, and K as well. So the fat-soluble vitamins are absorbed with the help of the cholesterol that is in the digestive tract, which came from the bile from the liver. But something that struck me when I was writing the book was researching on cholesterol. I found that 25% of all your cholesterol is found in the brain. And yet, when I went to medical school, all we heard about was how bad it was because it was causing problems in the arteries, hardening of the arteries. In fact, 25% of cholesterol is found in the brain. And it's there for a number of reasons which I don't need to go into, but I think people understand your nervous system requires cholesterol to function normally. And then we mentioned previously about how we burn cholesterol for fuel. Well, if you have low cholesterol, you can be very cold because you haven't got the fuel to burn. And for people who exercise a lot, cholesterol helps the muscles to be restored. So that was really the point I found that we need to bring home, that cholesterol has got a number of benefits. And I've only listed the ones that we know about. There'll be a whole lot more that we don't even know yet, Deborah, isn't that so?
Well, yes. Now, just to pick up on at least one of your points there, you were talking about the studies that people do, and particularly the medical people, into cholesterol. And yet Ansel Keys actually pointed out that diet has no effect on cholesterol levels in the bloodstream. And and just to pick up on your point about the liver making the cholesterol, he said there's no connection between cholesterol in food and cholesterol in blood, and we've known all along, and that's from 1954. And yet, how can we have forgotten such important physiology, as you're talking about, of the synergy that surrounds cholesterol?
Yeah, this is so true. But I must also warn people against, like I said to you, I'm a middle of the road type of person with cholesterol. The truth is that you can, in fact, influence cholesterol levels through changing diet. But you remember that point I made, that up to 90% of the cholesterol in your bloodstream was made by your liver. You didn't eat it. Mm-hmm. At least 10% did come from your diet. And so the truth is that through dietary change, one can influence your cholesterol levels by a minimum of 10%. Now, sometimes that 10% is all you need. Say, for example, your total cholesterol, which you want to be 5, strive for 5 is the term I coined way back about 30 years ago with cholesterol when I was still in South Africa. So we strive for 5 when we think total cholesterol. So now your total cholesterol is 5.5. Well, some small dietary changes will get it down to 5. So to say that diet has absolutely no effect on cholesterol, I don't agree with it myself. But I can understand that when people run trials, all sorts of things can happen. One of the problems with trials is you're dealing with people, and as soon as you tell them that we're doing a study on cholesterol, they think of all the things that they can do during the study to improve their overall health, because they want to be well. So they may exercise more, for example, or they may drink more water. All sorts of things people do on trials that they haven't been told not to do. And the other thing with trials that I have become distrustful of is the so-called placebo groups. So, for example, we know that a pharmaceutical company, if they want to make their product appear to be far better than the placebo, what they do is they find a group or a nation of people who are intolerant to lactose. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So 80-90% of a particular type of nation would be intolerant to lactose. So if you use lactose as your placebo, those people are all going to get worse, aren't they? Mm. Which makes their product appear far better than what it actually is. The other way of rubbishing a good product is to give a placebo that makes people healthier, so that the comparison between your product and the placebo isn't as great as it would have been if you had given them lactose, for instance. So let's take an example there of fish oils. There are people who want to rubbish fish oils. So what they do is they run a trial where they give the control group oily fish or fish oil capsules, and then the placebo group, they give olive oil. But we know that olive oil has a whole lot of health benefits. And then the comparison then they say, well, fish oil is not much better than olive oil, so why bother? And then that will be in all the newspapers. So can you see why I'm distrustful of trials in general? Yeah.
Well, it's like with any statistics, isn't it? I remember when I used to pull analysis together, my manager would effectively tell me what he wanted to see out of it. And so you can more or less make whatever you want out of a lot of statistics at times, I find.
Yeah, and that's why I like dealing with the individual person. I like working out how does this person's body work, what are their needs, and how can we measure changes? Because I think we may have discussed this in our first interview, but I don't like having a model that we squeeze the patient into. And there is a cholesterol model today where if you have, so now you have a TIA, which is a mini stroke, where even if your cholesterol level is 3.5, which is low, they'll put you on a statin drug. But hang on, why? Just doesn't make sense, because that is the model. You're being forced into a model whether you need that model or not. And that's why I think that our way of doing things, dealing with the individual, finding a model that fits that individual, our chances of success are going to be much greater.
Were you talking about personal experience of the individual and tailoring the actual healthcare, which is the way it should be, really? We are trying to force people. Interestingly enough, and just to pick on your Strive for 5 as well, an article in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology, a piece of research by O'Keefe, the lead author, he makes the claim that atherosclerosis is endemic in our population, in part because the average LDL level is approximately twice the normal physiologic level. So according to O'Keefe, our cholesterol level should be 2.5, not actually 5. And from my perspective, they're saying that we've all got high cholesterol levels. Does that mean we're all ill and we need statins?
No. I'm so glad you mentioned this, because this really makes the hair on my back rise. Firstly, we know that atherosclerosis, which is a fancy name for hardening of the arteries, is caused. You need 3 things in place before you get atherosclerosis. It's not high cholesterol. So what are those 3 things? Should we discuss atherosclerosis now?
Yep.
Is that okay?
Yep.
What you need before you get hardening of the arteries, there are 3 things that need to be in place, and they need to be in place for a long, long time. It is true, not raised levels of cholesterol, but raised levels of a type of cholesterol known as LDL, which is also known as the bad cholesterol. That, together with a low level of good cholesterol, which is called HDL. So that's the first factor. High LDL with low HDL. Then the second factor is you need inflammation. You need a level of inflammation inside the arterial walls. So any kind of injury to the arterial walls causing inflammation. And then the third thing that you need is a high level of free radicals. Now, your listeners may have heard of antioxidants. Antioxidants we know as normally as good things, because they neutralize or quench free radicals. So when you have far more free radicals than antioxidants, you have this imbalance called oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is a term your listeners may as well get to terms with now, because you're going to hear more and more and more of it in the future. So oxidative stress is where you have more free radicals than what you have antioxidants to quench them or neutralize them. And that means that you've got these supercharged molecules that are unstable and will attack your tissues. So in the blood vessels, the free radicals will attack the endothelial lining. The endothelial lining is simply that layer of cells that is the absolute top layer of the arterial wall that is in contact with the actual blood flowing over them, So you need those 3 things. High LDL with low HDL, inflammation, and oxidative stress. If you don't have those over a long period of time, you're not going to get atherosclerosis. So stop worrying about high cholesterol being the cause. It isn't high cholesterol. The other thing is we know about low cholesterol. A number of studies have been done on the damaging effects of having low cholesterol. So you remember all the benefits of cholesterol we mentioned earlier? Well, all of those benefits will be minimized or reduced, but the studies actually show with low cholesterol, we are more likely to get cancer. And you remember I said 25% of cholesterol is needed by the brain. Well, listen to all these other problems with low cholesterol: memory loss, dementia, depression, suicide, and hemorrhagic strokes. That's a type of stroke where there's bleeding. Now, if we know that low cholesterol increases our chances of these problems, wouldn't you tend to agree with me that the middle road is the one to walk? And that's why I feel that all these little bits of information need to get out there. I really do. And I just feel that it's time to blow the whistle on this nonsense that the lower your cholesterol is, the better. It is not true.
It's really interesting because when I was reading and have read over the years about cholesterol, it's almost like a house of cards. I feel the research that's almost waiting to fall down at some stage. Each study, which is often quoted, also has the other element where it shows that that even the Framlingen study. Effectively, it states that that there's a direct association between the fall in cholesterol levels over the first 14 years to the mortality rates of the following 18 years. That's, and for me, there's research after research showing that, as you say, that after the age of 50, the lower your cholesterol, the lower your life expectancy.
Yeah.
So how can we truly be ignoring what is absolutely vital information over and over again? Why would you want to lower your cholesterol? Basically, shouldn't they be providing us with cholesterol-raising drugs, not cholesterol-lowering drugs?
I'll tell you a funny story there, Debbie. When I was first qualified as a GP about 30 years ago, a patient came in and she showed me all the supplements she was taking, and one of them was cholesterol. And, I said to her, why on earth are you taking cholesterol? She said, my homeopath told me to. Said my cholesterol was too low. And I nearly had a heart attack. Because, you understand, I'd come from a medical model where cholesterol was bad. And there was no question about that. Cholesterol was bad, and that's that. So you must be crazy to advise someone to take cholesterol, and you must be even more crazy to listen to someone who tells you to take cholesterol. But it's just to show you the circle that I've walked, where actually nowadays I actually had a patient with anorexia, and the cholesterol levels were very, very low. And my fear, of course, she wasn't having periods because she couldn't make her sex hormones.
Yeah.
And of course she was on antidepressants and things because the brain wasn't working properly. And my hope is that people who deal the teams that deal with anorexic patients will really take cholesterol levels into account when formulating a meal plan, because I really was very worried about this particular patient. And of course, with an anorexic who doesn't want to eat fat, and they hear about cholesterol as fat, that's the last thing they're going to want to put in their bodies. So it really is, it's a scary place. While we're on the subject of heart problems and so on, you remember I said there are lots of other things that cause heart disease.
Yeah.
Can we, just for the sake of your listeners, quickly run through those? Because it is true that high LDL and low HDL is one of the risk factors for cardiovascular disease.
Yep.
But high blood pressure is a really big one. Being overweight and being inactive, and even worse is if you're overweight and inactive, you're more likely to get cardiovascular disease. And then uncontrolled diabetics, so diabetes mellitus, where that isn't properly controlled, those patients have a lot more free radicals or oxidative stress and inflammation. You remember we mentioned those, and they're more likely to get atherosclerosis, as are people who smoke. Now, I really sympathize for people that smoke. It is an addiction, and there's so much you can do about it these days. Even the other day, I found someone smoking an electronic cigarette. I thought, wow, that's a big improvement. And there are things that can help people give up smoking, but smoking per se is a major cause of heart disease. And then there are a few other things, but the one that sticks out is homocysteine. I'm not sure if your listeners have ever heard of homocysteine, but it's worth having a fasting homocysteine level checked, because trial after trial shows that raised levels of homocysteine in your blood put you at high risk of cardiovascular disease and strokes and Alzheimer's and cancer. So where cholesterol used to be the main test to do, today homocysteine is becoming the main test to do. And I actually had my own homocysteine levels checked, and there's a story behind that, which was raised. And then I had my genetic test done for high blood pressure and high cholesterol. But the funny thing was, I went to my GP and I asked if I could have my homocysteine levels checked. And he said to me, "How do you spell that?" So I spelt it for him. But only to find that the National Health Service laboratory refused to do the test. They said it's too expensive for them to do. So one of our problems is we know that everyone should have their homocysteine levels checked, but the NHS or National Health Service are not always providing that. It depends. It's one of those postcode lotteries. It depends where you are in the country. Some labs will do the test and others won't. But people should really have a homocysteine level check.
Brian, can I just jump in there and just get you to explain homocysteine in more detail for my listeners? Because, I know about it, but I'm sure, as you've said, that most people won't.
Yes, I'm happy to explain about homocysteine because it is so vitally important. You've heard of fatty acids, and you've heard of sugars, and you've heard of amino acids.
Yep. Yeah.
So homocysteine is actually a toxic amino acid. It's one of those things that if you, let's say for example, you on a train, shall we say from London to Brighton, but the train has to stop halfway, shall we say Haywards Heath. Now so London is a type of amino acid, and Brighton is an amino acid, but Haywards Heath is a really bad place, and you don't want to stop there long. Yeah. So there these very good and healthy amino acids. One of them is methionine, or S-adenosyl methionine, or known as SAMe. Now, SAMe wants to be changed into really other healthy things like glutathione, for example, which is a very good antioxidant. Now, the halfway station is homocysteine, and that process that stop is purely so that you can change one good thing into another good thing, but the halfway stage is toxic. And that toxic amino acid is called homocysteine. So it's a place you don't want. The more difficult it is to break down homocysteine into the other good things, the higher the levels go. And high levels of homocysteine cause all sorts of illnesses, as we mentioned earlier. Now, the good news is that some people don't have the gene that helps you to change the homocysteine quickly, but there are nutrients that these people can take that will do that for them. And those nutrients are some of your B vitamins like B2, B6, B12, and folic acid. And then other things that you find in vegetables called TMG or trimethylglycine, which you find in beans and peas, prawns, eggs, liver. Some people will be pleased to know you find TMG in French wine. Sugar beet is another cause, another source. But homocysteine, if you know your levels are high, then you can assume that you have a genetic problem of methylation. There is a methylation gene test that you can have done, but at the moment it's only done privately. It's one of those tests that I like to do from time to time. And then with raised homocysteine levels, if we give people these supplements, something with trimethylglycine, B12, B6, folic acid, improve, and sometimes they need extra zinc as well. Their levels, you measure their homocysteine levels and they come right down into the safe area. The tragedy is when people have very high levels of homocysteine and they don't know about it. Now that is tragic. I had a patient from Italy came to see me just 1 month ago. He had had a triple bypass. He was on all sorts of drugs for high cholesterol. Of course, he was on statin drugs. He looked ashen, that ashen grey color that you just know that this person is very unwell. Well, I said to him, what's your homocysteine level? And he'd never heard of it. So I said, let's run your homocysteine. And it was where you want your levels round about 6. That's a safe level. His level was 34. And so he went home, of course, and he typed in homocysteine, which I'll spell for you. It's HOMOCYSTEINE. Typed that into Google, and he got the fright of his life and decided he would take his homocysteine reducing supplements. And of course, his levels have come right down. Anything else you want to know about homocysteine?
No, I think you've covered that for everybody. That's brilliant.
Okay.
So you're talking about all of the risk factors.
Yeah.
And in effect, it's a much bigger picture than just cholesterol, is effectively what you're saying.
Exactly. Even, your listeners may have heard of coenzyme Q10. Low levels of coenzyme Q10 are also a risk factor. We need to talk about coenzyme Q10, Debbie, if that's all right.
That's absolutely fine. Go ahead.
We need to, because it fits into how your liver makes cholesterol. Remember, your liver manufactures cholesterol mostly in the evening. There is an enzyme in the liver called HMG CoA reductase. Yeah? Mm-hmm. And that enzyme manufactures cholesterol. However, it manufactures 12 other things as well. one of which is coenzyme Q10. And coenzyme Q10 is absolutely vital for our mitochondria. That's where you make energy. Mitochondria need CoQ10 in order to manufacture ATP, which is energy as we know it. Yeah?
Yes.
So if you suppress the enzyme that makes the cholesterol, you will also suppress the enzyme that makes coenzyme Q10, because it's the same enzyme. How do statin drugs work? They suppress the enzyme that manufactures cholesterol. So what happens to your levels of coenzyme Q10? Well, they go down. That's obvious. But why is coenzyme Q10 so important? Why is it that you do not want it to go very low? And what does it actually do for us? Now, we told you, we mentioned that it's vital for energy production by mitochondria. It's also a fat-soluble antioxidant. So in the fatty areas of the body, it mops up or quenches or neutralizes free radicals. But it's absolutely vital for muscle function, for muscles to contract. Now, which muscle can you think of in your body where the muscles never ever stop contracting and relaxing? Contracting and relaxing. Every second it contracts. It's your heart muscle. So, if your coenzyme Q10 levels go low enough, your heart muscle is going to weaken. But hello, we're taking statin drugs to help the heart. Wasn't that so? Well, not in this case, because if you're taking statin drugs that are pushing your coenzyme Q10 levels so low that your heart muscle becomes weak, well, what good is that? And that is one of the possible side effects. So, the most common one, in my experience, is tiredness. So you get put on a statin drug, and over the months you feel, oh, I'm just getting old. And people just accept that their energy is so low because they're old and they've got heart disease. But wow, give them coenzyme Q10 as a supplement, and their energy picks up and they feel revitalized. And it's, oh, you lost a lot of years quickly. They feel so much younger. And that's the other danger, is people they expect less. They just think, oh, I have to feel this way because I'm old. But actually it's a side effect of the statin drug. So we know that if coenzyme Q10 levels fall by 25%, that your major organs can really start to struggle, not only the heart. So I think that's enough said about coenzyme Q10, but later on we'll talk about side effects of supplements and contraindications of supplements. If you are taking warfarin or Coumadin, if you're in the USA, you must not take coenzyme Q10. You've got to use other ways of improving your energy.
Why is that the case with warfarin?
Because coenzyme Q10 interferes with the absorption and the functioning of warfarin. And warfarin is a life-saving drug. Some people, some people know it as rat poison. It is a poison. However, in low doses, it helps to prevent clotting taking place inside your veins and arterioles, those are small arteries, in order to keep the person alive. So, for example, someone who's got atrial fibrillation, that means the upper chambers of the heart fibrillate, they're not contracting. The blood inside there isn't moving properly. And if that person has other problems where they tend to clot, their blood tends to clot too easily, then they get these microclots that get pumped into the brain, and you get hundreds and hundreds of tiny hemorrhages in the brain, and it's really a condition that is dangerous to that person's health. They can die. And so warfarin is absolutely essential in some patients, essential. And then you don't want to go taking coenzyme Q10, trying to make them better, and you actually kill them with it. So that's the problem. So you need to understand that some medicines do not work well with certain supplements or dietary things. So people with high blood pressure, a lot of them already know you mustn't drink grapefruit juice when you're taking certain high blood pressure pills. Well, here's a case of, if you're taking warfarin, don't take coenzyme Q10, but speak to your doctor so that you take the minimum dose of a statin, so that you don't suppress your natural coenzyme Q10 production so much, and use other ways of reducing the bad cholesterol if necessary. I think that's all I need to say about coenzyme Q10, Debbie.
So how do we start to manage our cholesterol picture and our improved heart health?
Well, the first thing to do is to cut out refined sugars. Refined sugars are becoming more and more, well, we're learning more and more about them, that they are really not good for your heart and your blood vessels. Then if your cholesterol levels are really high, you may want to reduce foods that are high in cholesterol. Now, it's easy to think which foods are high in cholesterol, because you remember the liver makes cholesterol. Therefore, it's going to be animal products like meat, liver pate, shellfish, egg yolk, and we can talk about eggs. I think eggs are very good. But if you're trying to get your cholesterol levels down, you may want to reduce the number of eggs you're eating. So foods that are high in cholesterol you would want to reduce. Foods that have trans fatty acids are known to be bad, as you find in pastries and biscuits. Hydrogenated oils are also bad things, for example, margarine. And then don't have too many saturated fats. I'm not against saturated fats, but if you eat a lot of these things, like too much animal meat, chicken skin, sausages, bacon, pate, hamburgers, that sort of thing, you're going to have some problems with your heart. And then, so those are the things to try and avoid, but you can do that with the help of your natural health expert. And then things that you add to your diet would be high fiber, complex carbohydrates. Now that is really important. Things like eating oats porridge, barley, root vegetables, muesli, and your pulses like lentils, beans, etc. And then instead of white rice, have brown rice or wild rice. Buckwheat is shown to be a wonderful thing for high cholesterol. And instead of your refined breads, have whole granary bread. To get your omega-3 levels up, there are two ways of doing that. The one is you can have the more of the plants that contain omega-3, such as linseed oil. Some of you may know it as flaxseed oil, but in truth, linseed and flaxseed plants have the same botanical name, but the flax plant has got a very strong, sturdy stem with very little oil in the seed. And so flax is actually used to make linen. The more flimsy stemmed plant with a big oil seed is called linseed, and it's actually the linseed that you have. So when you see supplements with flaxseed oil, it's actually linseed. So let's get that terminology right. So your oily fish, when you think of oily fish, you think of the word smash, S-M-A-S-H. So it's salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, and herring.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brian.
Okay. And then all sorts of other vegetables. There are so many, like artichokes and shiitake mushrooms, garlic, onions, tomatoes. And then psyllium is another good one because it increases your good cholesterol. And something I just want to say, a word of caution for people using turmeric or curcumin. People who are caffeine sensitive should avoid turmeric and curcumin. It's just one of the rules, and I just want to spread that word a little because I find most of my colleagues in natural medicine and in nutrition are unaware of that. And then all sorts of teas people can have, so even green tea, black tea even. Then there's buckwheat tea, lime flower tea, but dandelion root tea is another good one. And then there are other things that people can do, and that is to look at if they need to lower this. Now, this is where the individual problems come in. So you need to discuss these with your own private healthcare consultant. Instead of animal milk cheeses, for example, you may want to have a vegetable cheese. And I personally use Benicol olive spread. Some people say, oh, but that's got this or that in it. The thing is, any food is going to have some problems. Butter is great. I think butter is wonderful, but then don't have too much of it. So we need to just be responsible in that way. And then if there's still problems with your cholesterol, various cholesterol levels, then you look at supplements. In my book, I have listed side effects and contraindications of various supplements. And I've done it for the express purpose of bringing to the attention of people that just because something is natural doesn't mean that it's safe. So, for example, take vitamin B3 or niacin. Can cause all sorts of side effects like flushing and nausea, and can cause liver problems. And you can't take niacin or vitamin B3 in high doses if you have problems with your liver. Also, you shouldn't take it if you are on a statin drug. And there's certain diabetic treatments that you shouldn't take it with as well. So when you look at the individual and you see, okay, this person's diabetic on this type of medicine with a little bit of liver trouble, raised liver enzymes, etc. Well, I mustn't give them niacin. So I wrote the book with this part of the book is for both the patient and the practitioner to just double check before signing off on a particular plan. But there are some really exciting supplements, things that I found excellent. One of which is krill oil, and here I must stress krill oil as it has come from the Southern Ocean, because like we have farm salmon, for example, which you can farm in your backyard, you can farm krill. So not all krill oil comes from where it naturally comes from, and it won't have the same oils in it to change how your liver makes good and bad cholesterols. But proper krill oil is one that I found not only lowers LDL, the bad one, but raises HDL quite markedly. So where you get someone, say for example, your total cholesterol is perfect, it's 5, yeah? Mm-hmm. But you break that down and you find that LDL is way too high and the HDL is way too low. Well, that doesn't now we know that your apparently normal cholesterol level is rubbish, it's bad. because the ratio of the bad cholesterol to the good cholesterol is wrong. Now, krill oil would be ideal there. So you notice the LDL come down, the HDL go up, and now that total cholesterol level is good.
You're talking about fats, and the low-fat diet industry is still quite a prominent industry. And, I still have clients turn up and say to me, I'm on a low-fat diet, and people do avoid their fats.
Yes, and you find that, as I mentioned, there are a whole group of people now avoiding fats because loads of magazines and people who do dancing, for example, ballet dancing, movie stars, so many of them are underweight. Mm. And it really sends out this message to young people, you've got to be thin. And so you get these dreadfully thin people who then start losing their brain function and they can't think straight, and then that makes it even worse, and then they become more obsessive. So when you see people on a low-fat diet and they're becoming obsessive, like they start washing their hands and they start picking bits off their food and so on, those people are showing signs of the problems of their low-fat diet.
I was yesterday I was doing a little bit of surfing on the internet, and I was watching somebody who's got a huge amount of videos out there, and is kind of a minor celebrity in the raw food world. And she was just talking about the fact that it was okay to have no periods, and that she'd had no periods for a long time. And she's on an incredibly high fruit diet with no fats from what I could see. And she was saying this was fine. I found this absolutely fascinating, to be honest, because obviously it's a direct correlation between what she's doing to her body and what she's eating due to that low-fat picture.
Yeah, exactly. But the body will offer up whatever you need in terms of fat that it is storing somewhere, even if it's only in the bone marrow. It will offer up whatever it can. But it cannot continue to do that indefinitely. So what you find is that they are fine, but only for a period of time. And then they hit a crisis where they have far too little fat to burn for energy, to maintain body temperature, and to maintain normal rational thought. And that's a crisis in anybody's life. And so anyone who says you should eat a low-fat diet for the long term, in the long term, they are crazy. The body just cannot keep sucking fats to support that attitude for very long. If one is trying to lose weight, for example, yeah, you may want to reduce your total amount of food you eat, but so your fat intake will reduce naturally, but the thing to really cut out is the sugars, the refined sugars. And this is what we're learning. When are people going to get the message that refined sugars are the problem, not the fats? The fats are essential for life. The sugars are not.
And there's the weight loss industry and the products that are produced around it are high in sugar.
Yeah, and high in sugar and low in nutrients.
Yes.
Yeah, so that makes their mineral levels even lower than what they already are.
And they totally focus on calories. So in effect, they count calories all day, not really understanding the wider picture of the nutrition that is needed for their body.
So, Debbie, can you see how important people like you are?
And like yourself, Brian.
There is such a fight. There is this massive battle. And we're fighting people who are making supplements, not only supplements for weight loss, but people who are producing food that goes on supermarket shelves. And you just think, wow, don't they know any better? It's really sad. And our Western society is unfortunately we're reaping the rewards of that sinfulness. We becoming more and more chronically ill.
Okay, Brian, this has been a really interesting interview with you, and I'm really glad we got this second hour in. How do people find your book? Where do people go to buy it?
Oh, thank you, Debbie. My book is available on Amazon as a soft cover and a Kindle version, and it's called Dr. Brian's How to Reduce Cholesterol Naturally. And it's really inexpensive, and I hope that your listeners benefit from it. And there's all sorts of information in there, as I mentioned, about which supplements to be careful of if you're taking particular medications, and what side effects you can get from some of these natural products.
And we've got a link to your clinic, and we'll put a link on for your book so that people can find it. Now, if somebody wants to come and see you about their cholesterol, where do they find you? How do they find you? How do they contact you, Brian?
Oh, thank you, Debbie. They contact my reception staff on 01403 258 351, or they can go on our website, which is the 3Ws.eagleclinic.com. That's eagle as in the bird. And I have a lipid lab here where we do all the lipids you need, total LDL, HDL, triglycerides, as well as the ratio of total to HDL. That all comes up, and you get your results immediately. So we do fasting lipid profile. That's what that test is called, a lipid profile, as part of an initial assessment. And people can find all the information they need on my website or by speaking to my staff.
It's been fantastic. Thank you very much for coming on Food for Thought.
Thank you for having me, Debbie. And remember what you said when we first started? You were feeling great.
And I was feeling fantastic.
I hope that your day continues in that vein.
Hell yeah.